Good morning and welcome aboard our stream, everybody. Thank you so much for coming aboard. We have so much exciting news to go ahead and talk about today. We have so many fun, both Marvel and even one DC Comics preview to get into. Of course, per usual, here we're going to be talking about the latest, greatest X-Men news. We're going to be circling the end of Krakoa and previewing the beginning of the From the Ashes comic book line over from Marvel, launching in just a couple months here. So, per usual, up on the channel, I think we had some fantastic comic book reviews this week. We started things off with the latest issue of DC Comics Flash Saga. Our stream today is really going to be focused in depth around that comic book as well as some of the other X-Men series. I've just absolutely loving what Cy Spurrier and some of the artists have been dishing up on the latest round of The Flash. The eighth issue of the DC comic book series was pretty interesting too, because alongside artist Ramon Perez, we also had Vasco Georgiev contributing over to the interiors on that issue. It was also a super interesting one. Wally West has been trapped in the mysterious gallery and he's trying to find a way out right now. All this is juxtaposed with these other Flash characters trying to find his location with heroes like Barry Allen as well. So really fantastic stuff. Also, I have been loving how Cy Spurrier has really been mixing up the cast for his Flash comic book run. We recently got Circuit Breaker in the series, and we're also getting like some of the other speedsters in the DC universe, like Wallace West and Avery Ho. So really, really interesting stuff, and just a really interesting way that Cy Spurrier is able to manage his really large cast of Flash supporting heroes here too. I feel like through so much of the DC's New 52 and towards the beginning of Rebirth, the property wasn't really able to tap into what the Flash was able to offer as a full franchise because it only fleshed out certain characters over others. I want to talk about some of the other comic book reviews we had this week on the channel. We had the climactic Rise of the Powers of 10. That was just a tremendous issue, really detailing some of the moral fragmentation of Professor Xavier. And just, I really feel like putting a highlight and more of an emphasis on so much of his mistakes during the Krakoan era and just how desperate he is at this point to try and reverse it and save the rest of the X-Men characters. Plus, this one was also super, super climactic because this is like the end of Marvel author Kieran Gillen's Marvel work. I have just been head over heels for Kieran Gillen for such a long time, even extending beyond his current run on the X-Men's Krakoan titles. From his run on Iron Man, from his run on Young Avengers, he's been, I feel like, one of the founders of so much interesting Marvel continuity. At some point, too, it's almost frustrating for me. The industry pays so much attention to creators like Jonathan Hickman, but when I think about the boost that Kieran Gillen lent towards the end of the Krakoan era with Immortal X-Men, he just really colored in so much of the ambiguous lines that were left on the cutting room floor from Jonathan Hickman. I think creators like Jerry Duggan, Kieran Gillen, Cy Spurrier, all doing just amazing work here on some of these final X-Men issues as well. I want to talk very briefly about the latest issue of Amazing Spider-Man that we also had a chance to cover. This was chapter 48 of the main series. To be honest, I like this one really, really considerably. I don't think this was the greatest issue of Spider-Man. I don't think it's the best issue of Spider-Man to feature characters like Chasm or Hollow's Eve. But I think Zeb Wells has just been doing tremendous work specifically with Ben Reilly. I feel like he's been doing really solid work even before this current run, even before this current run of Amazing Spider-Man over with Spider-Man Beyond here. And I really want to encourage, more people to get on board and be a little bit more open to some of Ben Reilly's changes as the issue continues. In particular, I thought the latest issue of Spider-Man did a fantastic job fleshing out the character of Hollow's Eve and bringing down some of the animosity she has with some of the other characters in the supporting cast. Okay, really fantastic stuff. There is so much going on right now at Marvel, But before we get into all of the really exciting new X-Men stuff and the end of Krakoa, I want to officially welcome you aboard over to our stream. So, over on this stream, we are really going to be talking about some of the final X-Men books and previewing the new From the Ashes comics. In particular, we're going to be focusing really deeply on the latest issues of Iron Man. I think Iron Man is in a super interesting place right now as the Krakoa era starts to wind down and we get to see what his relationship with Emma Frost is going to look like in the fallout of the X-Men's Fall of X series. Plus, we're going to take a look at the brand new Flash annual. The latest Flash series from DC Comics has just been so wacky and wild in managing just an impossible amount of plot threads. And elsewhere, we're going to take a look at some of the final issues of the main X-Men series during the Krakoan line. I did have the chance to preview X-Men 34 that we're going to be taking a look at later on in our stream today. And I am just so shocked with how that series is so nicely able to implement those elements of Rise of the Powers of 10 in order to make the Krakoan era feel so much more cohesive. Rez says, I'm excited to see KG Power Fantasy comic. No idea what that is, but welcome aboard our stream. Good to have you here today. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our very first news story of the week here. We've already been talking about this ad nauseum, but I want to start the stream by exploring the latest Flash comic book coming from DC. So this one is actually set to go on sale this upcoming Tuesday, and it's a Flash annual celebrating some of the ancillary plot threads of the series, as well as our greater speedsters. So we already set up this comic book a little bit, but I want to introduce the core protagonist of the series, Wally West. So Wally has currently been trapped over in the gallery at DC, and he's trying to find a way out and to reunite with some of his family and the rest of the speedsters in the DC universe. But so many other forces are impeding on Wally and some of his interactions with his family. We have the alien race known as the Stillness, as well as these interesting fractal worms that we'll see in the preview. Plus, Barry is seemingly possessed by an outside force and is having a hard time putting his ego aside to work with the rest of the Flash family to save Wally. Without further ado here, let's go ahead and preview the latest issue of the Flash's 2024 annual. Want to extend a big thank you to Adventures in Poor Taste here. The Flash family needs help from Barry Allen. With Wally West missing in action, Central City needs help dealing with the all-new bizarre threats that have arisen. So, thankfully, Wallace West, Avery Ho, and Circuit Breaker are here to help. But can they count on Barry Allen, who is having a crisis of his own? As you can see, even the solicit for the issue just sets up all of the really interesting plot threads surrounding this Flash annual. So this Flash annual divides so many different artists in the series. We have people like Amake Nahulpan contributing work over to this comic, as well as Scott Koblish. In these first couple panels, I feel like Cy Spurrier delves directly into some of the cosmic horror in the DC universe and starts to introduce that this is actually the plot thread dealing directly with Wally and this mysterious unnamed character. I actually went back and tried to find this character named in previous issues of the Flash series and haven't been able to. I'm really interested to see what kind of character relationships they might have with the rest of the Flash's ongoing supporting cast of characters. Also, over on some of these final pages, we finally get the preview of what's going on with Barry Allen in the background. As you can see, this Flash series is really delving up some of these sci-fi and Jack Kirby elements of the book. I think it's so interesting too how this page is able to juxtapose what's going on with Barry Allen as opposed to what's going on with Wally West over in this other dimension and in the gallery as well. So here's the final page of the issue, teasing some of those plot threads with Barry. As you can see, this paranoia is really getting to Barry Allen. I want to read some of his plot threads regarding Wally West that he's saying as well. He says, "We're better off without him. We're better off without him. Look, you've seen the terrific tech data. The Speed Force is in spasm. Its convulsions are causing time quakes, stasis waves, tears in space-time, and the way it looks whenever we use our powers, we're making it worse. I just think we should pause, take a moment, take stock, let the scientists have a closer look. Okay, and then this is the very last page over on our flash preview here. As you can see, Barry is really lashing out at both Avery and Wallace on this final page, and we see the mysterious eyes indicating that Barry may be possessed over on the final panel as well. He says, "Where are you, Wally, you little?" And then there we go. Barry seemingly curses in the final panel over in this flash preview here. So really interesting stuff. As you can see, there are just so many interior artists introduced over on this issue, and there's a lot of plot threads here with speedsters like Jesse Quick, Jay Garrick, Avery Ho, and Wallace West contributed over to this book. I think it's incredible just to witness how many different Flash characters are housed in one individual comic book, and I really hope that DC Comics as a whole really continues to introduce so many of the different speedster characters and really play into what the Flash series as a whole can contribute to DC Comics here. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and check out our very next preview. This is the latest issue of Marvel Comics' Invincible Iron Man. For me, this one is so much fun because it finally introduces Magneto back into the narrative. We're also switching back into my area of the expertise, which is the greater X-Men franchise. Plus, I think the last issue of Iron Man was really sort of declarative in how it introduced the fact that so much of Orchis is actually being controlled by the character of Nimrod and some of the machines within Orchis as well. So it's really going to be interesting to see Magneto take up arms alongside Iron Man and fight back against so many of these Stark Sentinels. Plus, Iron Man also has an interesting new upgrade here with his Mysterium armor. Okay, let's extend one more thank you to Adventures in Poor Taste and check out the solicit for Invincible Iron Man 18. Side by side with Magneto. For years, the Master of Magnetism was Iron Man's greatest fear. But to take down Orchis, will Tony have to work with the X-Men's former adversary? And will a fight against every Sentinel on Earth be too much for even these two powerhouses? So Invincible Iron Man 18, written by Jerry Duggan, featuring artwork by Chris Lee, inks from Walden Wong, and colors from Brian Valenza. We have letters from VC's Joe Caramagna, and art from Cale New. Okay, let's preview some of these first panels within the issue. One thing that's been so interesting to cover on this latest run of Invincible Iron Man is just how much animosity there's been between Fei Long and Tony Stark. Now, in this really decisive point within Fall of X, these two characters are finding that they're better off working together alongside Magneto. It's really interesting at this point to just see how many villains are working together with characters like Iron Man, brought together in contexts like the Fall of X here. And then over on this next panel, we finally have Tony really trying to find a way to fight back against Orchis now that Nimrod has seized control of just so many of the individual assets and they're being run over from Krakoa. Also, I think this artwork from Chris Lee is a little bit different from what we've seen on some of the previous installments of this run on Iron Man. I am noticing that it's not quite as detailed as some of the previous installments, but I really do think that this is at least a pretty solid effort in terms of some of the individual just facial details and expressions of the characters here. I want to read some of the final lines over from Fei Long and Magneto in the issue, really detailing and dispelling some of the animosity that these characters have towards each other as well. Fei Long says, "I can solve for that. I saw the factories on my screen before I was locked out of Orchis. They're all up here, a photographic memory. What I can't do is power this behemoth." And then we have Magneto totally taking the animosity away from some of his interactions over with Fei Long, stating, "I can solve for that." So really interesting to see some of the bright smiling faces in these final panels over in our preview for Invincible Iron Man 18. To me, it feels like we are in a much different place in terms of Invincible Iron Man than we were when we started off the run. I am really happy at this point that Jerry Duggan was able to cement so much progression throughout this run and just continue to lean into some of Iron Man's own experiences with the X-Men slated characters. Also, I know this book is winding down very, very soon, and I want to take a look at some of the upcoming issues on Invincible Iron Man and preview just how exactly this book is set to wind down here. Okay, so here's our preview on Invincible Iron Man 19. It looks like this issue brings War Machine and Iron Man together. Let's go ahead and check out the solicit on Invincible Iron Man 19. War Machine vs. Iron Man. From Iron Man to War Machine to the Iron Patriot and back, James Rhodes has always been there for his best friend. Now, Rhodey has endured months in one of America's brutal prisons to protect Tony Stark. What happens when he's had enough? Yeah, so it really feels like James Rhodes has been dealt, a bad hand in terms of Fall of X, really having to stay in prison, especially in this really harrowing context for the Iron Man comics. So really hoping that in Invincible Iron Man issue 19, we're going to get James and Tony's relationship repaired, and just hopefully getting to see James in a different position within Fall of X, I think is really going to serve his character nicely. And it seems to me that this issue is kind of teasing the end of the current run on Invincible Iron Man. This is, I believe, chapter 20. This is chapter 20 of the main series, stating, "The war is over. The war with Orchis is over. What does the future hold for Tony and Emma Frost?" I think this cover is so incredibly beautiful, detailing the relationship between Emma Frost and Tony Stark, with Emma kind of materialized here over in her crystallized form. So this status quo has really been teased across the Iron Man books extensively. Both Tony and Emma have talked about what their relationship looks like in some of the aftermath of Fall of X. For me, I really hope these two characters continue to kind of spread their relationship and explore what it looks like for some of the X-Men and Avengers books to kind of come together in a really fascinating capacity. Marvel Comics should continue to just implement these really interesting crossovers and character relationships to make their comic books feel unique, and I really hope that even in the aftermath of the next run of creators on Iron Man, that these individual characters will follow suit here. So there you go. That is Marvel Comics' latest Invincible Iron Man series. This comic book is set to wind down incredibly soon, and we're in the final last wave of issues here. Next up, we have the Marvel Comics main X-Men series, which is also dealing with the aftermath of the Krakoan line of comic book titles. This one so far has been a really tremendous series that has just detailed so many individual plot threads with our X-Men characters. Particularly Marvel's main X-Men series has really fleshed out the status quo and relationships for the underground X-Men, headed up by characters like Synch and Talon. Plus, we've also gotten heroes like Kitty Pryde as Shadowcat, as well as individuals like Orchis within the background here. So without further ado, I want to check out one of the final issues of Marvel Comics' flagship X-Men series and see how it reflects the final days of the Krakoan line of series. Let's check in over with the preview from Adventures in Poor Taste. I want to give a shout out here to Patrick Ross. The end is nigh. The Krakoan age is nearly at an end, and what might be the final battle for the heroes of Krakoa. One last stop before the fall, and rise come to their conclusion, and everything changes. X-Men 34 is still written by Jerry Duggan, featuring artwork from Joshua Cassara, and Marte Gracia also rendered some of the colors on the cover that we just checked out as well. So I really think this opening interior page from Joshua Cassara is so beautiful and does such a great job fleshing out some of the morality for Professor Xavier as a character. Professor Xavier recently seemingly sold out the human race within the last issue of Rise of the Powers of 10, so it makes this in particular preview page feel incredibly climactic for me. The way he sets up the final line of dialogue stating no more humans and just features Professor Xavier upside down with Omega Sentinel in the background is incredible. I love some of the themes that Jerry Duggan is exploring and just how cohesively the X-Men office has been able to utilize these different books between like the Fall of the House of X era. In particular, if you look at the connective tissue between Powers of 10 and Dead X-Men, I think there is a really interesting sense of continuity and characterization, particularly with Iskani, that is just so interesting to track between all of those different individual series. Sometimes it has felt like Marvel's main X-Men series has been on the fringes. So finally having this book like reference the last issue of continuity really helps it feel so much more cohesive like to the X-Men line of books. And also I just want to take a step back and say that for me, the best issues of Jerry Duggan's X-Men run have been in the sort of post Hellfire Gala Fall of X era of the series here. It just feels like he's taking on an incredible amount of plot threads and just building on everything the other writers have contributed to Marvel Comics' run of X-Men series. Also, I think this second panel over on the page is so interesting in how it details an earlier stage within the scope of Krakoa as well. Okay, in this second interior page, I am absolutely loving how the character of MODOK is being introduced back within the narrative. I actually thought in some of the recent issues of X-Men that MODOK was done being involved with Orcus or some of the recent X-Men antagonists. So it's really fantastic to have him be introduced back within the narrative, especially because he's able to bring a sense of levity to these really dark and dour X-Men series, really detailing some of the post-apocalyptic adventures of the X-Men trying to battle against Orcus. Let's go ahead and read some of his final lines of dialogue over on our preview. You know, I usually have to work really hard to get access to large databases of DNA, but Orcus just invited me in and gave me full access to all the human and resource files of its salaryman dopes like you. Turns out the artificial intelligence that it's had its hand up the backsides of you meat puppets didn't want to keep you around. But when they were done playing with you, but I do. Today is a day for making art. As you can see here, MODOK is really laying on some of his violent tendencies and just really shaking up some of these final panels over on a preview of X-Men 34. I also just want to take a step back and say that Joshua Cassara's art here is incredible. I think some of these page layouts do a wonderful job tracking the mysterious machinations of MODOK and just detailing motion in really interesting and mysterious ways surrounding the title. So just like we did for that last issue of Iron Man, I also want to explore what the future of Marvel Comics' main X-Men series looks like as well. So this is X-Men issue 35, and as you can see here, this one has an incredible amount of creators extending beyond even Jerry Duggan over to Kieran Gillen and Al Ewing. X-Men 35/700 is stated to be one of the final issues of Krakoa, and let's go ahead and read the preview over for the issue as well. All good things come to an end, and as good of a thing as the Krakoan era has been for mutant kind, its time has come at last. The tragedy and triumph of Fall of the House of X and the madness and mystery of Rise of the Powers of 10. They have all come to their end and led to this moment that will change the future of mutant kind for years to come. So X-Men 35 actually has a big wraparound cover illustrated by one of the founding artists of the line, Pepe Larraz. This one is slated to go on sale here very soon from Marvel and is set to be one of the final issues of the series here. Just to let you know here, this one goes on sale June 5th over from Marvel Comics. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take a brief break here. And then we're going to be back in just a few moments to talk about the end of the Krakoan era of X-Men comics and the beginning of X-Men's From the Ashes comic book line. Thanks so much, and I'll be back in just a few moments here. Okay, I want to thank you so much for standing by here and explore what's next up over on our stream today. As you can see over from the preview image that we have here, we finally have a brand new cover over from David Marquez, the interior artist over on Uncanny X-Men with Gail Simone. I want to talk about this brand new comic book series in detail, some of the newest news articles coming in over from Marvel.com here. Let's go ahead and explore Uncanny X-Men coming in from Gail Simone and David Marquez this August. When her uncontrollable mutant powers were tearing her apart, Rogue found a home and a family with her X-Men. Now, with her closest friends by her side, she'll step up to do the same for other mutants in Gail Simone and David Marquez's X-Men. So I really love this cover from David Marquez. I think it does an excellent job detailing some of the new designs for the individual characters and hopefully giving readers a preview of what the interior artwork is going to look like on the future of Uncanny X-Men. One quick thing I want to note here is I wonder if David Marquez is going to be able to draw each and every interior of the full Uncanny X-Men series. Excuse me, I'm really hoping that he's going to be able to take on just as much as he possibly can. I've been following Marquez's work from everywhere over at Boom Studios with the Joiners in 3D, extending even beyond that run to some of his issues of Ultimate Spider-Man over with Miles Morales. I think he's such a great interior artist and is going to be a fantastic fit for the X-Men suite of characters too. Sean Franklin, have you played X-Men Legends and X-Men Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse? You know what? I have definitely played those games at some point. I remember there being just an insane X-Men fighting game that was super good back in the day. I'm curious to know if it's that one or not. Rez says, nice to see Rogue leading. I completely agree. I think at this point for the X-Men, we need everybody but Professor Xavier in the limelight for these X-Men books. I feel like right now, with especially how Professor Xavier has sold out humankind in some of these last issues of Rise of the Powers of 10, and has really betrayed characters that are just so instrumental to the X-Men, like Ascani, has really put him in a different place. And I think these X-Men that we can see right now, like Wolverine, Jubilee, Rogue, Nightcrawler, these characters all have a pretty clean rap sheet when we look at what happened with Krakoa and through some of their morality. I think it's really interesting that we don't have Emma Frost or Kitty Pryde on either of these teams either, because it really feels like this team is a much brighter team that doesn't have some of those violent underpinnings like other comic books, like, for instance, X-Force has in the limelight here. Okay, so launching in August, Uncanny X-Men will be the second of 3 flagship titles set in the upcoming From the Ashes era. So it's also kind of interesting for me to hear that this is going to be the second series launched because this feels like the most instrumental comic book for the From the Ashes line. This is due in part to the fact that Gail Simone was one of the first creators announced for the From the Ashes line. She is also contributing to that free comic book day storyline, setting up the From the Ashes slate of titles as well over from Marvel Comics. So, really interesting to hear that this is going to be the number 2 as opposed to the number 1. Today, fans can check out all new covers for the debut issue, including group shots by series artist David Marquez and celebrated artist Lionel Francis Yu, a hidden gem piece by superstar artist Andy Kuberts, and the first in a series of character pinups spotlighting the new team by Luciano Vecchio. Okay, let's go ahead and get into all these brand new covers if I can pull them up. Give me just one moment here. Perfect. So this is one over from Luciano Vecchio, detailing Rogue over in the From the Ashes world for the X-Men. This one for me is super interesting because Vecchio recently contributed art over to the Resurrection of Magneto series. I just love how stylized so much of Vecchio's artwork is. Would love to see Vecchio contribute interiors over to a main X-Men title, like as a fill-in artist, if David Marquez wasn't available. Also, let's go ahead and talk about this Lionel Yu cover. Lionel Yu has been killing it at Marvel Comics for such a long time at this point. I really remember reading and enjoying his work stretching all the way back to Secret Invasion from Marvel Comics. Particularly love the way he's able to handle some of the facial expressions. Okay, I want to take a quick pause here because we're getting a lot of comments over in our chat section. Let's see what everybody has to say. Let's see. So AfroSF says, "Greetings, Arakko Braddock. Enjoying your stream." Oh, thanks for coming in the comments here. So we have Orcus, Stark Sentinels, Nimrod, and Modoc, but no Machine Man. Where is he? That is a fantastic point. If anybody knows where Machine Man is at this point, do let us know. I feel like this is a super missed opportunity in the context of Orcus with Machine Man's exclusion. I'd love to see that character be introduced here. Rez says, "I'm nervous for Mags, not gonna lie." Interesting comment here. Nobody except me. Fantastic to have you back in our chat. Jason, really good to see you as well. Interested to know what any of you are thinking about these X-Men books. Are either of you going to pick up, all 3 of these X-Men titles? Are you just going to be checking out the one over from Gail Simone? Do let me know here. So let's see. Are those all the X-Men covers we have? Nope. It looks like we have one more over from, let's see. This one is coming in over from Andy Kubert. It looks like this image is more of an homage as opposed to something set within the X-Men's main Krakoan era, just due to some of the overall costumes for the series here. Okay, and by the way, it also looks like this is some of our last news stories regarding Uncanny X-Men. Once again here, this one is set to come out over on August 7th. Written over from Gail Simone, featuring art and cover here from David Marquez. Per usual, we are super excited about this one. We will have a full review as soon as it comes out. I'm sure in the weeks and months to come over on our stream, we'll be talking about more of the individual preview pages and talking about more interior artwork. So rest assured, we'll be talking extensively about Uncanny X-Men as we get closer to the X-Men's Krakoan era. All right, give me just one more moment here, and we will explore our next news story. Okay, for me, for my money, one of the very best character relationships extending throughout the X-Men's Krakoan era has been all of the ways that Kieran Gillen has been able to explore some of the relationship drama over between the characters of both Destiny and Mystique. I am so excited about the fact that Marvel Comics is re exploring this relationship through the context of a marriage in X Men The Wedding Special. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's talk about some of author Kieran Gillen's final work on the X Men properties, which is also going to be realized in this issue as well. So, the full name for this comic book is Marvel's Voices Pride X-Men The Wedding Special #1, and this one is on sale nearly a month here over on May 31st. Marvel's Merry Mutants take center stage in this year's Marvel's Voices Pride one shot. The X-Men Wedding Special #1 anthology celebrates Pride Month with stories crafted by incredible LGBTQIA plus talent and hit stands on May 29th. Today, fans can preview the drama, action, and romance that awaits in a special preview in each of the 5 stories. So for me, there's been so many interesting scenarios that Gillen has been able to play up between Destiny and Mystique, whether it be like in the far future of Sins of Sinister, whether it be in so many of the ancillary issues of Immortal X-Men. I just think the way that he's been able to extend and characterize so many of these like individual mutant relationships in all the different contexts and storylines has been amazing. I am so excited to see what Kieran Gillen has to offer as a coda to this relationship that he spent so much time working with. In the final couple issues of Immortal X-Men, even despite whatever storyline Kieran Gillen was dealing with, he always lent some additional moments or ways to tie the characters of Destiny and Mystique back into the narrative. There is a lot of love here from some of the creators. Let's go ahead and read a little bit more about what they're bringing to this upcoming X-Men issue. I am just catching this right now, but the way that they've redesigned the X-Men logo to include this wedding special text is just so clever as well. Plus, this cover is a super fun homage over to a marriage issue between Spider-Man and Mary Jane as well. Join the X-Men as they come together to honor one of the most beloved and longest-lasting gay couples in comic book history, Mystique and Destiny. This landmark comic book special marks Marvel Comics' first woman-to-woman wedding, and with the pair as complex as these two, you know there will be plenty of drama, secrets, and surprises. From the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants to the Quiet Council, Mystique and Destiny have been steering the fate of mutant kind for decades. The Krakoan Age saw the long-awaited resurrection of Destiny, and after pivotal roles in the era's biggest storylines, their love has never become more prominent. Before Krakoa comes to an end, fans and characters alike will celebrate the iconic pair by witnessing the renewal of their marriage vows. You know, I just want to take a couple moments here and say that one of the biggest reasons why this relationship is so important to the Krakoan line of comics is because it introduced plot threads involving Nathaniel Essex that were just really instrumental to the end of the Krakoan narrative due to the fact that Enigma recently went online here. So because the X-Men already have like a pre-established relationship with Nathaniel Essex through characters like Mystique and Destiny is so interesting and really enriches these books so much. Nathaniel Essex really feels like he's inspired so many of the final storylines in Marvel Comics' Krakoan era. X-Men The Wedding Special's spectacular main story will be written by mastermind Kieran Gillen, who's penned some of the couple's recent adventures in Immortal X-Men, and drawn by acclaimed artist Rachel Stott. Okay, I'm not familiar with Rachel Stott. Apparently, looks like she's contributed some work to Star Wars Dr. Aphra and Fantastic Four. In addition to new insights into Raven Darkholme and Irene Adler's breathtaking 100-year romance, fans will finally get a glimpse at their original and never before told wedding and discover the pair's secret motivations for hosting the event. That is so crazy that we've never seen the wedding between these two characters before. I am so thrilled to check out what the interiors of this issue are going to look like and to see just how whip smart that dialogue is going to be written over from Kieran Gillen as well. In the same tradition as the iconic Hellfire Gala and classic Marvel wedding issues like Fantastic Four Annual 3 and X-Men 30, X-Men The Wedding Special 1 will be a wedding extravaganza with multiple stories all centered around a night that will go down in mutant history. Okay, so in addition to Mystique, as well as Destiny from Kieran Gillen, we are also getting some work on two of my favorite Marvel Comics mutants, that being Betsy Braddock and Rachel Summers. This is also really exciting because this is a story written by Excalibur veteran Teenie Howard. Looks like she's joined over by Philip Sevi. I've seen some really good artwork from him recently too. Howard pits the new couple against the Omniversal Majestrix, Opal Luna Saturnine. Just about everyone in the Marvel Universe is invited for the vow renewal, except for Saturnine, of course, and she's not happy. But why is she taking it out on Betsy and Rachel? That is so cool to hear that, like, those Ten of Swords plot threads, those Realm of X plot threads are being like delved up back within Marvel's continuity. I am so interested and just excited to see what else they have in store for this one. Okay, elsewhere, we have a storyline with characters like Wolverine, Anole, Pixie, Indra, and Bling. This is coming in from writer Tate Bomball and artist Emilio Pilio. They're going to make their Marvel Comics debut with a story primarily centered around Wolverine. Logan has a long and bloody history with Mystique and tasks Anole, Pixie, Indra, and Bling with finding her the perfect gift. Oh, that is so sweet. That is so nice. On a whirlwind journey that takes them from the savage land to limbo, they'll learn a valuable lesson about the importance of queer representation. That would be so cool if these characters were able to run into like Madeline Pryor in Limbo or even Chasm or Hallows Eve. Super fun idea for a story. Let's see what else we have here. It's her mother's big day, and Rogue has entrusted their favorite son in law with their wedding bands. But can Gambit stay out of trouble long enough to deliver them? Find out in this story about one of Mutant Kind's most complicated families by two Marvel Comics newcomers, writer Wyatt Kennedy and artist Jen St. Ange. Yeah, that is so cool for Marvel Comics also to explore the relationship between Rogue and Destiny and Mystique. Implementing that into the wedding special is really going to be a fantastic piece of Marvel continuity that's really going to make this wedding special feel unique and authentic towards the X-Men, especially because Marvel has been exploring these plot threads in some of the recent Rogue and Gambit series from authors like Kelly Thompson. All right, let's see what else we have here. Mystique and Destiny receive some pre-marriage psychic counseling courtesy of Emma Frost. See how the inspiring love of two former villains holds up against a telepathic onslaught of hard truths in this twisty tale by writer Yoon Ha Lee in his exciting Marvel Comics debut alongside acclaimed artist Stephen Byrne. Stephen Byrne is a tremendous artist over at like DC. I've also seen him do work at Marvel Comics as well. Once again, it's going to be so cool watching all of these creators contribute work towards these comics. You know what? Frankly, the fun doesn't even stop there. It looks like we also have some interior pages. Give me just a few moments, and I'm going to see if I can fight with Marvel Comics image gallery to put them up on the screen. Let's see. Okay, I have found a new way to do this, and it looks like it's working. Here, let's just minimize the window a little bit. Let's see here. Okay, I think that's just about as good as we're going to get. We've already taken a look at this cover between Jan Bazaldua detailing the marriage over with Destiny and Mystique in the wedding special. Honestly, this is just so beautiful. I love this cover. I really think Jan Bazaldua is going to be an artist to really look forward to with future Marvel Comics works as well. I recently saw this too. I didn't realize that Marvel had created like a wedding invitation here. Here, I want to read this right now. It says, "We are immortal. Please join Raven Darkholme and Irene Adler as they celebrate decades of love by renewing their wedding vows. Wednesday, May 29th, 2024, at the Avengers Vacation Experience Hotel, formerly Avengers Mansion." Whoever wrote this card did a really fantastic job. They wrote combat dress optional, and we have an RSVP required. First of all, just the fact that we have a shout out over to Immortal X-Men is so beautiful. I am loving the skulls detailing, I think, the unconventional nature of this marriage as well. Also, I really like too how they say towards the bottom of the wedding invitation that combat dress is optional. This is an X-Men wedding, and per usual, something is going to go wrong. It's always a good idea for these characters to go into weddings, fully ready for combat experience here. Okay, take a look at this interior page here from Rachel Stott. There is just so much detail in the background, extending from some of the masks for Destiny, as well as the curious glance she's giving towards the audience and the reflection that you can see over with her in the mirror, too. There's just so much symbolism in some of these interior pages. Once again, I am so thrilled that Kieran Gillen is writing this final chapter as well. Take a look here at Destiny's dress. This is just amazing. I had the pleasure of showing, some of my friends and family this image too, and they were really taken back by some of the design here. Once again, just the panel bleeds, the negative space, the inclusion of X-Men writers as well is so beautiful in some of these pages. Just really fantastic stuff from Marvel. I'm so happy that they're like celebrating the end of the Krakoan age with finally seemingly a happy moment between Mystique and Destiny here. We already told you that the interiors from Stephen Byrne were going to be really, really good. And now you can finally see me putting my money where my mouth is here and showing you just how interesting and just how interesting it is to watch some of the political tension in this scene between Destiny, Mystique, and Emma Frost in the narrative here too. Really good facial expressions, interesting sense of secondary action too, with like Raven pouring this tea for Destiny as well. Okay, let's see who drew this page. This is really gorgeous. Looks like this is the Rogue and Gambit story illustrated from Jen St. Ange. It looks like this page is also going to be one to look at too. Okay, also we have a tease at that storyline involving Wolverine and some of the younger X-Men children. This interior artwork is illustrated by Emilio Pilio. Really loving how like big and bold the facial expressions for the characters are and how the page is structured. And this is one of our last images here, celebrating Betsy Braddock, Captain Britain, and some of those elements of Ten of Swords over in the Marvel Universe. This one illustrated from Philip Sevy. And there you have it. That is our preview of the X-Men Wedding Special. Could not be more excited about this and some of the final work that Kieran Gillen is bringing to the end of the X-Men's Krakoan suite of titles here. The relationship between Destiny and Mystique has driven so much plot for the X-Men franchise. The idea of Kieran Gillen heading back to this relationship towards the very, very last days of Krakoa, there's just something ominous and really haunting about it that I really wanted to explore at length. I hope you enjoyed some of our coverage. Give me just one moment here, and then we're going to take a look at our next story. By the way, thank you everybody for coming out in chat today. Really good to have just so much activity here. Okay, I think as we continue to get more familiarity with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we have some characters that are really standing out as opposed to others. There is something so fascinating about Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, and whenever we have a Russell Dauterman piece of artwork, I always want to highlight or explore it in a lot of depth. Let's go ahead and see what Marvel Comics has in store for this interesting lore variant on Scarlet Witch issue 3. This one is coming in over from Marvel.com on sale in August. Steve Orlando, Russell Dauterman, and Jacopo Comagni's Scarlet Witch 3 sees the return of lore. This June, chaos ignites when Steve Orlando's Scarlet Witch run returns. Teaming up with X-Men Red's Jacopo Comagni. By the way, Jacopo Comagni delivered amazing work over on X-Men Red as well. Anybody who hasn't had the pleasure of checking out X-Men Red, really encourage you to do so. I think that was one of the best, absolute best books in terms of the Krakoan era. Orlando will use Scarlet Witch to continue to push the limits of what Wanda's magic is capable of as she becomes the Marvel Universe's prime defender against deadly mystical new threats, new and old. Among them will be Lore, Wanda's demonic counterpart from the 1994 Scarlet Witch limited series. Even I was wondering who this character was called Lore. It looks like this is a super deep cut in terms of Marvel's past that they're exploring through the context of this variant cover from Scarlet Witch mastermind Russell Dauterman here. Complete with the wicked new look from Dauterman, fans can check out Lore on the cover of August Scarlet Witch 3 and on Dauterman's original design sheets. In addition, Dauterman will join Comagni as an interior artist on Scarlet Witch 3 to bring Wanda and Lore's epic battle back to life. Lore returns. Scarlet Witch's fight to reach the land of the living puts her face to face with her necromantic multiversal counterpart. Lore won't stop until her death at Wanda's hands is avenged, but another one of Wanda's nemesis may hold the key to her survival. Redesigning Lore was a huge treat, Dauterman said. Lore is an evil Wanda variant, so I wanted to contrast the design I did for our Scarlet Witch, which was meant to be magical, vibrant, and superheroic, by going dark and sinister with a goth undead vibe. I'm incredibly excited also to be drawing some interiors on the issue where the two Wandas face off. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. We do not get Russell Dauterman art very often over at Marvel Comics. We especially do not get his interior artwork very often. Dauterman has only illustrated a few issues of Scarlet Witch in the past, so the fact that we're getting some interiors for him in the brand new run of the series is definitely cause for celebration here. Hopefully Marvel will show off some preview images and we'll be able to explore them over on our stream. So Scarlet Witch 3, in addition to having interiors by Dauterman, we're also getting work from Jacopo Comagni. This cover is from Dauterman, and it looks like we're also getting a variant from Joelle Jones. I really love Joelle Jones as an artist. I'm really interested to see what she could bring to Scarlet Witch 2. We have one final blurb exploring Lore, and then we're going to explore some final covers, and I'm going to give you a little bit of my impressions on Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, as well as the Scarlet Witch series in full from Marvel. Lore, who destroyed her own world before trying to conquer the multiverse, represents Wanda's worst fear, a version of herself that's gone mad with power. Will Scarlet Witch need her own inner darkness in order to defeat her? Check out the art for Scarlet Witch 3, including a variant by Joelle Jones, and pre-order Scarlet Witch 1 at your local comic book shop today. Okay. Wow, we have the cover from Joelle Jones, and it is awesome. It is so cool. Okay, so here is lore captured by Joelle Jones. Jones is a much darker artist than Russell Dowderman. I think just the way that she's been able to capture the facial expression for lore, as well as the sinister, like dark elements of negative space from her costume, is so interesting. I'm also absolutely loving the green background. And plus, the red hues over on the eyes is just so sinister as well. The new logo for Scarlet Witch is actually pretty cool and a little bit different from what we've seen previously. Tremendous stuff from Joelle Jones. I'd love to get interiors from her on a full issue of Scarlet Witch as well. As if that wasn't exciting enough, we also have a design sheet from Russell Dodderman too. So here is the design. Oh wow, it looks like that image gets really, really big when I go ahead and expand it. I want to read some of this here. Give me just one moment. Okay, it says Lore is a Scarlet Witch variant with the same body proportions and details as Wanda. She has a crown, earrings, and makeup. Her eyes are always glowing red. Let's see. As an aspect of her powers, Lore can create shadow demons that extend from her, dripping from the black parts of her costume. Okay, yeah, we can see the black parts of her costume towards this image of the design document as well. The demons are all black silhouettes with glowing red eyes, various types, shapes, and sizes. Okay, so there you go. I just wanted to briefly explore what's upcoming in terms of Marvel's Scarlet Witch property. Before I do that, I just quickly want to give some impressions towards Steve Orlando's initial run on Scarlet Witch. I think for the most part, Orlando did a pretty solid job detailing Wanda Maximoff's newest adventures as she hosted her magic shop over in the Emporium and had all these mysterious villains venture outside of the last door. Some of these characters weren't just villains either, they were individual characters who needed Wanda's help. And even though I thought so much of the characterization for that series was a little bit brisk, and that author Steve Orlando could have taken on a lot more plotting, there's just something about the overall charm of that series and the way that Wanda is able to detail some of her interactions with people like Darcy Lewis that help that comic book really add up here to a greater whole. In terms of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, I wish that series had stronger pacing and also had more continuity over with the Resurrection of Magneto, but I do think it's had some solid characterization. I'm just hoping that in Steve Orlando's next ongoing series with the Scarlet Witch, there's going to be a lot more ambition as opposed to the last run, as well as these elements with Quicksilver. On the whole, here, I see that there is so much potential in this book, and I really hope that Orlando will dive directly into the dark fantasy narrative and just tap into the full potential of the Scarlet Witch property. Rez says, is this a mini series? Let's see if I can check that here on stream. I'm not seeing anything, whether it's an ongoing or mini series. Let's see what else here. Rez says, I'm always going to be curious to see when they're going to undo that retcon. Indeed, indeed. Okay, so that was a brand new or familiar villain from Marvel Comics past being introduced back into continuity here. Let's see what else we have to cover today. Okay, it looks like we have not one, but a second article to talk about regarding the latest Uncanny X-Men run. This one was published April 25th over on Marvel.com. I want to talk about some of the character descriptions and just some of the new relationships between the characters that Marvel is detailing here in this article. Rogue leads the X-Men to a new home in Gail Simone and David Marquez's Uncanny X-Men. Simone and Marquez's Uncanny X-Men is one of three core series for the X-Men's From the Ashes era kicking off this summer. Mutants may no longer have a homeland, but they'll always have a home. Announced last month and launching in August, celebrated writer Gail Simone and superstar artist David Marquez's Uncanny X-Men will be the second of three books in the From the Ashes era. Okay, I know we've already explored a lot of this in our previous article, but it looks like this one actually details some of the brand new status quo relationships over with Professor Xavier. With Professor Xavier gone and his school transformed into a nightmare reflection of itself, the series sees Rogue step up to be the pillar of Xavier's dream, alongside Wolverine, Gambit, Nightcrawler, and Jubilee. From their new base of operations in New Orleans, the Uncanny X-Men are back to being the outlaw heroes the world hates and fears, and the light in the darkness for mutants everywhere. Mutant kind has made a big statement with Krakoa, and now life is harder than ever before. But Rogue's X-Men will be there to welcome mutants to their newfound family. So one of the key aspects about this book that's really exciting for me is how it's changing up the destination for the X-Men. The fact that we're getting some connective tissue with Gambit, with the location of New Orleans, I'm hoping is going to introduce some new plot threads and aspects to the X-Men that's going to make the From the Ashes era feel unique. I still wish that the From the Ashes era had a bigger status quo point to jump off of that's equivalent to the Krakoan era for Marvel Comics, but I'm hoping that if Gail Simone will be able to just introduce so much of her own personality into the narrative, that we'll have an X-Men book that still feels really unique and personal, even despite the fact that it's not taking on a really big and bold subject matter here. Comics and Tortillas, thank you so much for coming to the stream. Rez says Xavier is more of an antagonist, I see. At this point in the X-Men suite of titles, I feel like it is really looking that way, especially if you check out some of the latest issues of Rise of the Powers of 10. It feels like Professor Xavier has just done so many negative things towards the elements of Krakoa that the animosity has really been dialed up between his relationship with the other X-Men characters. A group of essential X-Men rise from the ashes to face a world without a home and without Professor X. All bonds among the mutant community seem to be slipping away, and Rogue reluctantly finds herself as the hero designated to bring them back together. But a fearless, malignant power is out there hunting mutants, and it has a terrible secret that may destroy what remains of the X-Men. Also happy to hear that Gail Simone is really cooking up an antagonist in the back of this narrative as well. Most of my time lately has been spent trying to keep my brain from exploding right out of my skull from this book. It's either the fun of all my favorite mutants acting in surprising and wonderful ways, the impossibly brilliant work of the art team, or the thrilling collaboration with all the other writers. Somehow every day is just filled with some kind of manic joy. Ever since I took the book, I've been scribbling notes and plots and bits of dialogue day and night. I feel like a kid at a carnival. Who doesn't want to write Rogue and Jubilee and Gambit and all the rest? And now we have the art team coming in, giving their impressions here with David Marquez. Uncanny X-Men is the book that made me fall in love with comics. It's been a dream come true getting to work with Gail, Matt Wilson, and the whole Marvel editorial crew under Tom Brevoort to put together this story. A badass, heartfelt, action-packed, character-driven X-Men mystery. I hope readers have at least half as much fun reading it as we had making it. Gail Simone said about David Marquez, I absolutely have to take a moment to praise David. Not only is this going to be one of the best looking books on the stands, he's simply an idea machine, and he makes every single page better than I wrote it. Anyway, come join us. We're having an X adventure, and you are all invited. Okay, so Uncanny X-Men issue 1, as we previously detailed, is on sale August 7th. As we previously mentioned here as well, we are going to be continuing to talk about so much of the interior work, the artwork, the designs throughout these individual comics. And we're going to be talking about the rest of the X-Men books too, like the adjectiveless upcoming X-Men book over from Jed MacKay, as well as the exceptional X-Men comic book with some of the younger characters. Marvel also still has a few creative teams to announce, I believe, on the rest of the books. I am also still kind of holding out hope that maybe Cy Spurrier will be involved with Nightcrawler in Legion throughout the From the Ashes era. But for now, we are just waiting to see what exact direction Marvel's going to take on. Plus, I would also assume probably in the first, if not the first year, the second year, Marvel's probably going to announce some sort of big, bombastic X-Men event as well. But that probably is pretty far out as of this point. Okay, so we're going to switch gears just a little bit here and talk about, I think, one of the most anticipated, one of the most read books over at Marvel Comics currently. And this is a title that's really interesting because I definitely have an assenting opinion as to most of the internet. If you already haven't guessed it by now, we are talking about Marvel Comics' latest Ultimate Spider Man series. It looks like the publisher just detailed a brand new teaser. I want to go ahead and talk about it with you right now. First up, I just want to talk about my relationship with Ultimate Spider Man before we get into this article. I was really hyped and anticipated for Marvel's latest run on Ultimate Spider Man. I have such an affinity for the character of Spider Man. I absolutely love Jonathan Hickman as a creator. I feel like I've been enjoying Marco Cicchetto's work over at Marvel for such a long time. And I was really hoping they were going to have a super high concept towards the foreground of this series that really carried comic books like Ultimate Invasion. But as I got introduced to some of the cursory issues of Ultimate Spider Man, I was introduced to a Peter Parker who's a lot more familiar than I would have hoped. Peter Parker is currently married to Mary Jane. He has a couple of kids to call his own, and he's just getting used to being Spider Man in the new run of Ultimate Spider Man from both Hickman and Cicchetto. It's been a charming and pleasant book, but it hasn't felt very ambitious. It's really been detailing some of his relationships with characters like Harry Osborn, who we've also seen explored in countless other Spider Man properties. It looks like we have a brand new teaser image that is actually set to introduce Dr. Octopus towards the new run of Ultimate Spider Man. For me, this kind of feels like yet another step back towards Ultimate Spider Man because this is a character, yet again, who's been explored so exhaustively in so many other mediums and so many other stories as well. I want to try to keep an open mind, and I want to see what David Brooke and Adventures in Poor Taste have to say about Dr. Octopus being introduced towards Ultimate Spider Man. Marvel Comics has revealed who the big bad is in Ultimate Spider Man. After the Kingpin throwdown of issue 6, and it's none other than Dr. Octopus. We know this from an interior page from Ultimate Spider Man 5, as well as teaser text. Issue 5 will introduce art by David Messina with writing by Jonathan Hickman. This news comes just days after Ultimate Spider Man 4 drops some doozy bits of Spider Man canon in the new universe. Check out the cover for Ultimate Spider Man 5 here. I always love it when Marvel presents interior pages as house ads for previews. Plus, the fact that there's all these interesting Doctor Octopus arms in the background are really really cool. I just wish this had more plot implications. I wish we were working with different characters. I wish Jonathan Hickman was using like ways or narrative techniques to make Ultimate Spider-Man feel more unique from its predecessor, as opposed to using just the age of Peter Parker and the fact that he has these relationships towards his family to make this book feel unique. I really want Marvel to bring Ultimate Spider Man in a more narratively ambitious direction. And at this point, I don't know why Jonathan Hickman isn't taking on more plot threads or writing a more comprehensive ongoing series at this point. Maybe Ultimate Spider Man will change as we get deeper into the continuity and as Jonathan Hickman introduces more ideas. But at this point, I feel like I've read a lot of issues of Ultimate Spider Man, nearly every one, and I feel like my opinion right now is really fleshed out. Um, I am so curious to hear if anybody has a dissenting opinion or a different take on Ultimate Spider Man. I'd love to read it on stream. Elsewhere, this is just really a reflection of how I personally am feeling. Okay, let's see. We have about 4 news stories left on the stream today. Let's go ahead and detail one that's really, really interesting. I don't know if you've actually been paying attention, but I really think author Benjamin Percy is having a tremendous run on his Wolverine series. Plus, he's being joined by Victor Laval, who's done incredible work with Sabretooth as well as the Exile characters. So many of these plot threads are being introduced back into Marvel Comics' main Wolverine narrative. And I think issue 50 is set to be a pretty tremendous issue of the series, detailing so much of what Logan has experienced throughout the Krakoan era, and plus detailing some of his relationships with Sabretooth too. So let's talk about Wolverine 50. This is a sneak peek offering a first look at Benjamin Percy's explosive final issue. This one is on sale May 29th. Wolverine 50 celebrates 50 years of Wolverine and 50 issues of Percy's run. Marking the milestone 50th issue of Percy's run and hitting stands during Wolverine 50, next month's Wolverine 50 will be one of the character's most pivotal issues ever. In anticipation of the landmark issue, fans can check out never-before-seen artwork from each story now. Packed with bonus material, this giant-size issue presents the explosive final chapter of Percy, Laval, Jeff Shaw, and Corey Smith's 10-part epic Sabretooth War storyline, plus a story co-starring Jubilees from legendary Wolverine scribe Larry Hama, and a special sneak peek at Wolverine's upcoming adventures in the From the Ashes era. Having masterfully guided Logan over the last few years, Percy will also bid farewell to his character in Wolverine 50. After closing out Wolverine's final Krakoan Age adventures in the main story, Percy will team up with Javi Fernandez in a special send-off that explores Wolverine's incredible legacy. I don't think I've ever heard about Javi Fernandez working at Marvel before. I'd love to see what his interior art looks like over on Wolverine. On closing out his run, Percy shared 50 issues of Wolverine is a hell of a lot to be thankful for, but the math gets hairier when I do some counting. I've actually been writing Logan in the audio drama, X-Force and Wolverine, and all the crossovers and spin-off events. For 7 years, 20 episodes, and 130-ish issues. That's a whole lot of snicket. That's a big part of my life and career, and I feel nothing but gratitude for the experience. I also can't believe I've been lucky enough to serve as a custodian of the character who's important to me. Thanks, Bubs, for joining the mayhem. I did have the chance to take a look at the most recent chapter of Wolverine on store shelves. I believe that's issue 48. It was so cool to see Wolverine like reflecting on his time during Krakoa, especially with some of his character relationships and where he is now as a character. I feel like so much of what makes Marvel's current X-Men comics interesting is the fact that this is so late into the continuity with all these different characters. This current version of Wolverine that we have in the comics is the most complete version we'll ever have due to the fact that he's had just so many relationships over the years, and Marvel Comics has never forced like a full entire reboot. And frankly, I hope they never will, because it would prevent comic books like this from like even existing over in the first place. Plus, that issue of Wolverine did a tremendous job, like showing Wolverine powering up, getting his adamantium gear and the Muramasa blade to do battle with Sabretooth. I am really looking forward to the final elements of this Wolverine series, and I think this is yet another really solid piece, like adding up to the whole of Krakoa that has made like this entire line of comics just so unforgettable. Also, I just want to say one last moment here that Victor Laval is such a great creator. I'm so happy to see him joining Benjamin Percy in winding down their aspect of Wolverine and Sabretooth in terms of the greater Krakoan narrative here. Really quickly, let's talk about Scott Koblish's amazing homage cover detailing just so much of the recent X-Men continuity here. He's really illustrated nearly like every X-Men ever on this one individual cover, serving as a variant for comics detailing the end of Krakoa like X-Men Forever. Excuse me, I meant to say X-Men 35, but X-Men Forever also would count towards that opportunity as well. Just tremendous, tremendous stuff. Okay, for our final news story, I want to go ahead and talk with you about Marvel's recent X-Men Monday. For me, this one is going to be super fun because it details the latest issue of Fall of the House of X. Fall of the House of X4 was absolutely wonderful. I love the way it detailed Apocalypse desperately trying to save the Krakoan tree from the forces of Orcus. Plus, some of the new revelations involving Cyclops and the Sentinel City were so interesting to read. I am just really, really interested to hear what Jordan D. White has to say about Fall of the House of X4. The penultimate issue of Fall of the House of X is on sale. And if you're an X-Men fan, that means you're aware of a fan favorite character's sacrifice and that shocking betrayal. If you're an X-Men fan and have no idea what I'm talking about, go read Fall of the House of X4. Okay, welcome back to X-Men Monday, Jordan. We kick off Fall of the House of X4 with Apocalypse making a mockery of Orcus and the Stark Sentinels. Let me ask you a hypothetical question. Had Apocalypse never gone away at the end of Ten of Swords, would we be in this Fall of X mess right now? Jordan White says we'd be in a very different mess. Apocalypse is not diplomatic. Apocalypse is not a guy who works things out peacefully. Would Orcus be where Orcus is? Maybe not. But if Apocalypse had publicly slaughtered them in the streets a year ago, that's probably would have been another issue for the X-Men to deal with. Yeah, he's a really powerful dude, and I feel like he'd be in a different place had he not gone away. But also, everything would be in a different place. I can't imagine Apocalypse sitting on the Quiet Council and letting some of the things that happen. But I also don't think his solutions would be solutions that the good X-Men and hopefully the readers would have approved of. That is great insight and commentary from Jordan White. I definitely think that Apocalypse may have prevented, some of these sins from Nathaniel Essex, Mr. Sinister himself. Maybe he would have been able to prevent some of the foreign forces from invading the X-Men and dealing such a heavy blow to these characters. Apocalypse really takes action in both X-Men Red as well as Fall of the House of X4 and does like everything he possibly can to like help the X-Men and stop these invaders from dealing so much damage towards the rest of the line. Really great comment and insight from Jordan White. In fact, Jordan White always does a wonderful job connecting so many of these plot threads together. I feel like hopefully Jordan is going to do some really tremendous stuff towards the upcoming Avengers books.
I am really hoping that White is going to be able to steer the main Avengers book by Jed McKay back towards greatness. I've been so disappointed by like some of the subpar plotting in that book, and I feel like Jed McKay is able to write a good Avengers comic. I am hoping Jordan White is going to be able to lead him towards a stronger path on that book to make it the comic book I want to read each and every month. In this hypothetical scenario, add in Magneto, who was also off the board. Wow, that is great insight. Imagine if we had both Magneto and Apocalypse on the Quiet Council. Magneto had already abandoned Krakoa, but if the Hellfire Gala happened, he would have taken an interest at the very least. He's literally come back from the dead in Resurrection and Magneto after saying he did not want to. I think both of them would have made things different. Magneto has a much stronger chance of having made things better than Apocalypse. I mean, Apocalypse is a bit different than he's been in the past, but he's still a guy who, if you don't come around to him relatively quickly, he might persuade you with fists rather than persuasive arguments. You know, survival of the fittest. I think there's some material in there for a future What If comic. Next, we can see the destruction of the summer house on the moon. I'd like to take a minute to mourn one of my favorite locations from the Krakoan era and ask you to share your favorite summer house memories. Yeah, my favorite summer house memory was at the very back of X-Men 1. Good question. You know, in X-Men 1, they just have a Summers family dinner. That was a much different feeling from what I think we would expect to see in an X-Men comic. I mean, there's a lot of found family in X-Men, and there are a lot of good bonding moments. But now they have a house where they have dinner, which just seems so, wait, what? Really? Especially since they had been in much dire straits than in the previous era. It was so refreshing and nice. Similarly, the family scenes with Jean, Scott, and Cable together. Yeah, I totally piggyback off of this one. That moment in the very back of X-Men 1 where Starjammer or the Starjammers have that really climactic conversation with Scott is just incredible here. Who can forget Scott eating a Philly cheesesteak? That was a pretty good one. And then the other one was the screwed up Vulcan, just lying around the house drinking with his two imaginary friends. It turns out that was pretty delightful as well. In this issue, we have a powerful callback to the Crucible issue of X-Men. Only this time, Apocalypse's actions are to save a dying Krakoa. How did this story come about? Jordan White says, well, we had long talked about the idea that the original X-Men feeds on mutant energy. And at some point in the past, we had talked about the idea that with an entire mutant nation on it, Krakoa lives off the smallest, tiniest, unnoticeable mutant energy from everyone. It's so small the mutants aren't affected by it, and Krakoa is able to flourish. At some point again, it came up when everybody leaves. Does that mean Krakoa is starving? That's why Kieran Gillen has very specifically made Krakoa less lush in his books. It's gone into autumn or winter mode to conserve energy. Once again here, that is such a great piece of attention to detail from Kieran Gillen. Immortal X-Men has like always detailed the seasons and just has done a great job following the individuals of details of Krakoa to make it feel like a fully lived in, fleshed out place. Man, some of these panels from Fall of the House of X from Lucas Wernick detailing Apocalypse's like relationship with the Krakoan tree is so beautiful too. So, now here it is in dire straits. Not only that, but it's been wounded. This central essence and self of Krakoa ran off to try and protect itself has been wounded so much. Jerry Duggan brought in this story of what he referred to as a reverse crucible, where they need to sacrifice for the good of Krakoa, and of course, that's an Apocalypse idea and beat, and then the whole idea of Rockslide giving himself to the crucible for the survival of Krakoa was one that came up and we thought was really sad, but really interesting. Yeah, I am so interested as well to hear that this was an idea fleshed out by Jerry Duggan with the Crucible. I feel like there is so much commentary across the internet that elements of Follow the House of X feel rushed, but the idea of having Apocalypse take on a reverse crucible to save the Krakoan tree is a wonderful plot thread that feels like instrumental to the core of the X-Men franchise. I feel like this is totally the type of thing you would want to see in the dual miniseries winding Krakoa down. My next question was actually going to be about Wrongslide and the end of his story. What are your views on Rockslide's transformation into Wrongslide, and how do you feel his death in the issue opens the door to Rockslide's return? Jordan D. White says, well, let's see. What can I say about the saga of Wrongslide? First of all, I might be torn on this. He wasn't the first character that we suggested this happen to. There was another character that we had proposed before, and for a very long time, I believe we made the wrong choice and we should have done it with this other character. Now I'm happy with where we ended up. I'll tell you who it was, and I'll tell you why we didn't pick him. Oh boy, Jordan D. White definitely needs to tell us who the other character is at the Reverse Crucible here. Oh my goodness, it's Glob Herman. Oof, oof, that would have been so nasty and so dramatic. Oof. The character that I think maybe should have been the one to be killed in Otherworld and therefore come back wrong was Mr. Glob Herman. Now, the benefit of that to me is that we had spent a long time focusing him in the year or so before in a couple places, and we didn't have plans to use him after. I mean, we still haven't. He's popped up, but he hasn't popped up a lot. And in these places where he was used in a very personal connection kind of way. Like you get to know him in a different way and ideally grow to like him. So it would have been heartbreaking, I agree, for him to have died and came back. And again, not that we had Rockside plans, we didn't. But the fact that he hadn't been focused on much, it just seemed like it wouldn't have all fit together a little bit if it had been Glob. Can you guess why we didn't pick him? AIPT says, I can't. I was going to say Ed Brisson said something and stopped it. Jordan, you got it. It was because Ed was still a writer in the X office at the time and was like, no, guys, come on, please don't do this. It's been a long time since I thought about Ed's love for Glob Herman. Jordan D. White says it was 100% Ed stumping for him, so we shifted over to Rockslide. Yeah, Glob Herman is such an amazing character at Marvel. This is a representation of him. Just due to the fact that he has this like monster style aesthetic, he's able to pull out so many warm and bright moments towards the X-Men franchise. I think it'd be a really bad idea for Marvel to take him off the board. I feel like definitely somebody is going to have something to say about him towards From the Ashes. I'm telling you, it really feels like he could fit nicely in Jed McKay's X-Men book, especially because we have, characters like Kid Omega on that series too. Anyway, the name Wrongslide was a name that Leia Williams kept putting in the scripts because she wanted to emphasize that he was really different. Now, it was very unclear to me reading the scripts whether she intended that to be a name or if it was actually used, but it was clear that this is not Rockslide. I don't know what she intended as the editor of the books, but I knew we weren't going to call him Wrongslide. That didn't make sense. He would still be called Rockslide. Who would name themselves Wrongslide? It wasn't until Al Ewing wrote him in X-Men Red and brought up that name as something that would be like really hurtful. But then he accepted it. They really touched me and I was like, okay, wow, his name is Wrongslide. In terms of the true Rockslide returning, there was a really big and significant thing that happened between the creation of Wrongslide and with the resurrection, which was the ending of the trial of Magneto and the creation of the waiting room. That changes how people are resurrected, or at least it changes how people can be resurrected, hence the resurrection of Thunderbird, so it's possible. Okay. So it looks like AIPT has a question over to Jordan White, asking about why Professor Xavier is trying to sell out humanity. They say, "Does this confirm once and for all that Professor Xavier is a jerk?" Jordan says, "It's very interesting. If you go all the way back to the very beginning of the character, while he has this noble dream, the idea of humans and mutants living together, he's an extremely flawed and problematic character. He is a jerk. Now, at the very beginning, you can probably write that off. Well, he's the school teacher, so they're playing him as a very strict. But the longer the series go on, the more he expands in all the ways you understand him more, but also he's still a jerk. And that rose to new heights in the last 20 years when we found out about Deadly Genesis, that he led a bunch of children to their deaths and then covered up for many years. Or when he sent Wolverine on kill missions that he had erased from his memory. He's done some pretty gnarly stuff. One of the things that I think was so impressive about the way that Kieran Gillen wrote him is that Kieran didn't undo any of these things. He just went, let me accept those things, let me write the character in a way that hopefully the reader can understand him, even though they don't agree with him. The speech he gives in the narration for Immortal X-Men 10 is just pure Xavier. I think it does a really great job of showing the psychology of the character in a way that makes sense of the seeming contradictions. And this story isn't over. It will obviously go into more of what he's doing and why. Rise of the Powers of 10-4 comes out this week, so you'll have more information after that. This is a very interesting conversation. I want to take a step back and say that in certain adaptations of X-Men continuity, writers gloss over some of the more controversial decisions that characters like Professor Xavier make. When you exclude these elements of continuity, it makes a less informed, a less engaging character who hasn't had as many experiences. So the fact that Kieran Gillen is able to put all of these pieces into context and flesh out a more complicated and flawed Professor Xavier, I feel like is really core to what creators like Chris Claremont were doing and to just the core of Xavier as a character. He's a character who, again, going right to the beginning, believes he knows he's best. He's got all these children he looks after. He still thinks of them as children to this day, and in a way that can be really nice. But also, are they children? He's the adult in the room, and he has to make the decisions. The big one was sending everyone away at the Hellfire Gala. Was that the right choice? He thought it was the right choice. He did it to save people, not to hurt people. Could the X-Men have just fought and won? We'll never know because he made the decision for them. If you remember, the reason why Professor Xavier seemingly sent the mutants away from Krakoa to the gates was because so many of the X-Men died during the attack on the Hellfire Gala, whether it extended to Bobby Drake Iceman or Jean Grey. Professor Xavier just couldn't handle to see any more X-Men dying, so he ordered them to leave and just leave Krakoa in order to preserve the mutant kind race. Let's see. We have the swords. We have the sword station impaling Sentinel City in Storm on the way. Has the final battle begun? Yes, says Jordan D. White. Nimrod was trying to cook the earth with Sentinel City, and then they stabbed it with the sword. You need to stab things with the sword sometimes. So we specifically have 3 finales: Fall of the House of X5, Rise of the Powers of 10-5, and X-Men 35, which are all part of the conclusion to the Krakoan era. They all wrap up different aspects of it. The main story you've been reading in the Fall of the House of X will be wrapped up in the next and final issue. In the next issue of Rise of the Powers of 10, you're going to find out more about what Xavier is doing. There's lots to learn there, and it also kicks into a really big and exciting finale of that series, which will carry over into X-Men Forever as well. So, if you're only reading Rise of the Powers of 10, I would also recommend reading X-Men Forever too. Fall of the House of X5 is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight with Mr. Nimrod. They've fought with him and they haven't done great so far, and an important thing to remember is that he's shown from his very first appearance when he came online in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men, he's not just one dude. There are more than one of Nimrod, so If you kill one, what does that even mean? It's not going to be easy, but it should be a good issue. This is one of the final covers for Fall of the House of X. Really climactic and just great look at the very final stages of the Krakoan comics. Okay, and there are people who thought that Amber defeated him in the first issue. Before we wrap, I also saw that recent X-Men Monday guest Luciano Vecchio is drawing the final issue of Rise of the Powers of 10. This is actually news to me. I had no idea that Vecchio was illustrating that issue. I have been loving what RB Silva has been doing in Rise of the Powers of 10. I think the color work in that book is so beautiful. That issue has really felt like a post-apocalyptic, like sci-fi X-Men hellscape. And like the only person who I could see filling the shoes of that artist is Luciano Vecchio. I think we're going to be in for some really interesting and like curvy artwork that'll hopefully be like more distinctive from RB Silva. I'm also hoping Karen Gillan will be able to use some of like Vecchio's like curvy art to render some of the more nuanced aspects of his script as well. Jordan White says yes, and it looks amazing. We were obviously sad to lose RB Silva on the last issue, but the fact that Luciano was able to do it for us was a godsend. People are going to fall out of their chairs when he does in this issue. He's an amazing artist and has been on everything he's done for us and other people, but this is next level work. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the final X-Men preview pages towards the back of these X-Men Monday issues. I'm going to see here if I can guess what comic books these are referencing. It looks like this is a panel from Rise of the Powers of 10. This one, to me, it looks like it could be a preview of X-Men Forever. Also, this one must be from the latest issue of Cable. I'm thinking this could be the digital series over from Marvel, detailing Betsy Braddock and maybe illustrated by Philip Sevy. Here we have a look at a very recent issue of Wolverine and what I'm guessing is the latest chapter of X-Men due to just how much Firestar has been in that series. Okay, and it looks like there's going to be a future X-Men Monday detailing some of the mysteries of Krakoa. We will be covering that in a lot of depth as soon as that X-Men Monday is released here. Okay, so I think that is going to actually bring us over to the end of this stream for the week. Man, I want to thank you guys so much for coming aboard. I had a tremendous time detailing some of the final issues of Invincible Iron Man and X-Men. Over on the channel this week, we are going to have some reviews for upcoming X-Men series. We will have a full review of X-Men 34 up this Wednesday. Also, Tuesday, we will be reviewing the Flash's 2024 annual. Thank you so much for coming to watch our stream, and I just hope you have a fantastic rest of your Sunday. Thank you so much, and I'll be back really soon.